The WMBA Americas hosted SEFCON V on November 12, 2014, and John Lothian News was there. We interviewed 14 SEF operators, regulators, and participants and put together this three-part series on the state of SEFs 1 year into the mandate. Part 3 looks at the new market structure brought about by the creation of SEFs and the regulations that guide them.
With regard to market structure in the SEFs, we switched gears with SEFs and said goodbye to market structure issues with regard to trade reporting and clearing the middle of last year, 2013. What would ordinarily take in a natural evolutionary cycle in other asset classes 5, 10, maybe as long as 15 years to develop, we did it in probably as many months.
So 1 year into it, we now have virtually all the SEFs onboarded onto our platform. Obviously, there were implementing issues in the early days. There's still work to be done, but having said that, we're seeing volumes coming through the SEFs. The volumes tend to be concentrated around 5 to 6 SEFs at the cross-asset level, but certainly we have 18 active SEFs reporting data. In interest rates, first and foremost, we see approximately 40% of the new trades now being SEF executed. And of that volume, approximately 45% is also being cleared. So we're seeing that momentum increase. In credit derivatives, it's only the indices right now that are subject to the reporting, but equally we're seeing approximately 40% of that data also flowing in through the SEFs.
Well, we had to comply with new rules on pre-trade. We had to comply with new rules on credit checking and clearing and straight-through processing, and then stuff such as that customers came back to us with, like pre-trade allocations, post-trade allocations. That's not the sexy stuff, but the really, you got to roll your sleeves up and get involved stuff that needs to be figured out.
While many of the pieces are now in place, this structure is still taking shape, and in some cases the rules have led to uncertainty and unintended consequences in the market structure.
We're starting to see kind of sort of monopolies develop. You have now only Triana left as the central credit facility now that MarketServe's decided to step away from that. Obviously you see MarketWire is the sort of central point of the movement of data, whether it be to DCOs or to SDRs. So, and then depending on who you are as a client, you've got sort of monopolistic clearing facilities in the form of LCH and CME. So I think, whether that's a concern to the regulators, I don't know. But certainly, we've got situations now where if one of those infrastructures were to go down, then you have a dysfunctional SEF marketplace at that point.
Right now we're in a situation where you have 24 temporarily registered SEFs who all want to be registered, and you have a bit of a conundrum. Are they going to approve one at a time? And if you're number 24 in the queue, that's not a very advantageous place to be in the marketplace. So the staff is getting through it, and as we've heard today at SEFCON, the resources are not abundant at the CFTC, so they can't throw too many resources at this. But along the way, more issues are being raised, such as how do you handle position limits? What do you deal with cross-border? How do you deal with cross-border issues? How do you deal with block trades? I mean, how do you surveil over a voice system? So there's a bunch of issues that are coming up through this registration process that have actually raised more questions than answers, and those have to be dealt with. And they really have to be dealt with, I would say, expeditiously if the registration process is going to continue.
A key aim of Dodd-Frank and other regulations was increased competition, but is a true all-to-all SEF marketplace possible? Is there a cost in terms of liquidity from these and other regulations? Is aggregation of separate liquidity pools a viable option?
One of the main problems with market structure is still that these two worlds, they start to come closer to each other, but they are still quite separate. They have distinct ways of operating. And that plays well for some players and maybe less for others. It will certainly be a problem for maybe those 20 out of the existing 24 SEFs that will be the weak ones, because they will struggle to develop liquidity.
We're kind of skipping over the notion that's really the white elephant in the room, which is liquidity provision. And what we've seen across OTC markets, in fixed income especially, is this decline of liquidity provision. So with the capital constraints that have been hitting the banks, via Basel III and the liquidity coverage ratio, the amount of liquidity that's available to people who are seeking it on demand, which is essentially the investment community, in the current market structure, the principal-based risk model, is just declining precipitously.
So SEFs are essentially already aggregating liquidity from traditional market-making bodies. So then the question is it necessary to have an aggregator of aggregators? And that's a point for debate. Today there are 24 SEFs. There's a need to aggregate 24 SEFs if you don't want to have 24 implementation projects to get to each of those platforms. 2-3 years from now, when there aren't 24 SEFs, it's not clear that it's the same business decision.
What we really need to do as a marketplace is we need to, and one dealer put it is, we're building a lot of ramps, which are sort of technologies and SEFs and trading protocols. But what we're not doing is opening up the parking lots that those ramps service. So we really need either places for capital to be generated, or we need to incentivize liquidity providers to come to the table. And one way we might be able to do that is give market participants the tools to become price makers as opposed to solely price takers.
If the dealer community remains the liquidity provider, the market maker, the buyer or seller of last resort, you will have a bifurcation of the market. If this broader buy-side community does stand up to say, we'll be the market makers, we'll take that on, then you have more of a choice, more of a chance for the all-to-all. But I think what's really important is there are probably as many conflicts of interest in the notion that an asset manager is now a market maker. Right? People don't talk about that, and that's something that should really be considered here. There's a desire by the buy side to seek out liquidity from the sell side. It still happens today. You heard Bloomberg on today's panel talk about the number of trades they do as dealer to client. More than half their trades are in the credit default swap market. It is a dealer to client marketplace today. That doesn't mean it's broken. It means it's trading on a regulated, licensed, transparent, recordable, auditable facility. And again, one of the objectives of Dodd-Frank was to do that.